guess I didn't hit it hard enough. So,
You doing okay over
okay.
there?
That's this.
Yeah.
That's this.
I can try to replicate my, Mark's mic checks, if you wanna, we did some with the phones.
Yeah, like me. Bueller.
Yeah.
Bueller. Is this thing on?
Yeah.
He's sick. My best friend's sister's boyfriend's brother's girlfriend said he passed out 31 flavors. Thank you, Simone. No problem whatsoever.
That's my son's favorite movie too. It's funny, it's a lot of people's favorite movie. That's my mic check.
kids make a snowman in your yard?
We, for the Martin Luther King
Yeah.
time we had all that snow, we made it, we decided against snowman removal. So we did that, it was a lot of fun.
Nice.
Yeah, it was no fun with that one. And then we had a huge plow, decided against snow power.
Hey, me. Oh my God. You okay? Yeah, but they're not cool people in front of us. Cool people. They're cool older people.
It's a marathon. Own it.
Alright, I'd like to call the meeting to order, please, and begin with the pledge of allegiance. Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. With us this evening, we have Glenn Bobek, trustee, Jake Grover, trustee, Nicole Novak, trustee, Jude Kuhn, our district clerk, Dr. Brian Graham, superintendent, Ashley Dreyer, president, Sue Marston, vice president, is excused, Joy Lamarca, trustee, Danielle Bruno, trustee, Michael Loria, assistant superintendent of curriculum, staff development, and human resources, and we also have Dr. Ruby Harris, I saw her a minute ago, assistant superintendent of business and finance with us, and Cheryl Cardone, assistant superintendent of pupil, assistant superintendent of pupil services. Excuse me, and here we go. Just a couple of announcements. If you could silence your cell phone, please, and keep the emergency exits clear in case we have to leave suddenly in the back, and there's one directly in front of me and directly behind me in case we need to exit. If I could have a motion to approve the agenda for February 7th, 2022, please?
I'll motion.
And a second?
I'll second.
All in favor? Aye. Any objections? Any abstentions? Motion carried 6-0. If I could have a motion to approve the minutes, please, for January 10th and January 31st, please?
I'll motion.
And a second? All in favor? Aye. Any objections? Any abstentions? Motion carried 6-0. We have some student ambassadors with us this evening. From the middle school, we have Sienna Sarkis and Mr. Bustamante will do his little introduction for us.
Good evening, Board. How are you this evening? The middle school would like to introduce our public relations liaison, Sienna Starkey's, to talk a little bit about what we're doing at the middle school. Sienna, come on up.
Hello, my name is Sienna Sarkis, and I am the Student Council Public Relations Liaison. As February is rolling on in, we knew we had to start planning our Valentine's Day event. Considering the COVID-19 rules, we have decided to do the sucker sale again. For last year's sucker sale, we sold many suckers, and this year we have had requests to do it again. At our last meeting on Wednesday, February 2nd, we decided on which suckers to sell and the price of each one. We will have 3 students from each grade signed up to sell tickets for 50 cents each, Monday the 7th through Thursday the 10th. Students will then have the chance to buy suckers during their lunch month and then have them sent to their friends. They will then be on the students' homeroom desks on Valentine's Day, which is Monday, February 14th. We also planned another Spirit Week leading up to February break. Monday, students can celebrate Valentine's Day by wearing their Valentine's colors or their heart gear. Tacky Tourist Day will allow students to get in the vacation spirit. Then students can show off their craziest outfits on Wacky Wednesday. Throwback Thursday will have students wearing outfits that represent their childhood or a time period from the past. Lastly, we will close out our Spirit Week with the Pajama Day on Friday. Thank you for having me and have a great night.
Thank you. And from the high school, do we have Juliana Huber with us?
Hello, I'm Juliana Huber, and I will be speaking about the musical. I played Dorothy, and the musical is Wizard of Oz, and we also have our lion and our scarecrow here. Okay, so the high school second quarter grades came out last week, and students are starting to meet with their guidance counselors this week to plan out their course requests for the upcoming school year. Now that's out of the way. This past weekend, our school had the privilege to perform our first musical production in 2 years. The Grand Island High School production of The Wizard of Oz had 3 performances total, Friday night at 7 p.m., and 2 Saturday performances at 1 p.m. and 6 p.m., including a meet and greet with activities like cookie decorating, coloring, and picture stations for the kids, as well as a basket raffle. Our show was a huge success, being we sold over 1,200 tickets and 65 patron ads were included in our program from all over Western New York. This production began with auditions the second week of November, followed by after-school rehearsals starting from just before Thanksgiving and continuing throughout December and January, including 2 6-hour Saturday rehearsals. Additionally, there were countless more hours dedicated to the making of this show, being that many of our set pieces were designed, built, and brought to life by our very own tech department. Mr. Sweet, a tech teacher here at GI, was a huge asset to the creation of our sets, assisted by many cast members that are also his tech students. Many of our special effects, backdrops, and props were rented from Pat Murphy's company, Lightrix. This production would not have been made possible without our amazing teachers, Ms. Boutte, Mrs. Murnitz, Mr. Els, Mr. Reed, Mr. Gordon, Mrs. Chamberlain, Mrs. Keller, Mr. Sweet, and 2 Grand Island High School alumni, Katie Kleinschmidt and Faith Borak, who came back to choreograph. These people and many others have all dedicated so much of their time to making sure that after all of our lives were flipped inside out due to the pandemic, we still got to experience something so dear to all of us, musical theater. I can speak for all of us students when I say that we will be forever grateful for all of the hard work they put into making this show happen. We have made countless memories that we'll cherish forever and formed bonds that will never be broken. If you saw the show this weekend, I hope that you enjoyed all of our hard work, and if you missed it, we hope to see you at the Grand Island musicals for years to come. Thank you.
Thank you, Juliana. We'd like to congratulate in our correspondence recognition and good news the entire cast and crew of The Wizard of Oz and invite Mrs. Boutte up to say a couple words and maybe introduce her cast to the board. For those of you who don't know, Mrs. Boutte is Wonder Woman. She coaches, she directs, she organizes community ed. She's pretty much does everything here. So
Brian just ropes me in every time. So thank you for having us to come speak in. Juliana did such a wonderful job, and she's so eloquent in the way that she wrote everything, because it only touches the surface of just the work that was done over the last 12 weeks, which feels like forever, and also a second all in one breath. Certainly we could not have had the production that we had without our amazing cast of characters, and that includes both our teachers and our students, and all of the amazing organizations in Western New York who made it happen. So I'm going to just have you guys come on up too, because it's not about me, it's about this amazing group of talented students. So I have Juliana, who you guys just met, Anthony, who was the scarecrow, and then we also have Alejandro, who is the lion, who embodied the lion even in the meet and greet. These kids really have done an amazing job, and I think it's amazing to see. Juliana's a senior, so she was with us pre-pandemic. She was in the Beauty and the Beast with us as a sophomore, and you did Into the Woods as a freshman, right? And then we got these two gents this year who are freshmen. And I can tell you, as the director and as the producer, when you have this talent that comes in as a freshman into our doors, we're so excited for the next 3 years. And if you were lucky enough to see it this weekend, you could just tell that there is just so much potential for just us to get better and better and better. And I think it's a personal goal of mine, and I haven't shared this with the cast, but as we move forward, I think we're definitely going to be putting ourselves in for the nomination for Kenny's in the future, which is the local theater award, just because the talent that we have in front of us is just outstanding. And we've been lucky enough in the business department to have a partnership with Shays, and we're hoping to bring them in next year and to continue to grow our musical theater program over the next few years, and capitalize on the amazing talent that our elementary buildings and our middle school have just started to grow, and we're just going to hopefully pick up with what we have and just capitalize on this amazing talent. And if you were lucky enough to come to the meet and greet, that's where the magic really happened. And there were many times, and I could even cry now, where it was just great to see these kids interact with our community member. Anthony and I have been crying all weekend. I just look at him and I cry. But I know Dr. Graham was there for our meet and greet, and it just and Mr. Bobek, and it was just magic. It was magic to watch our little kids who've been living in this kind of crazy world come, and just for a few hours, it just seemed like there was just something so beautiful about it, and these kids really made them feel special. Alejandro took off his courage badge and put it on one of our students because they were nervous to meet him. So it just goes to show that theater is just a wonderful tool for our students to really cross over and make connections, and this island really turned out big. We had 1,200 people come, which is outstanding for the conditions, and Dr. Graham and I all week were in touch with each other, and we did, I think, a great job of getting in people to see the show. And we just, even today, we already started to talk about next year, and it's crazy, like you're packing away stuff like, oh, thank goodness that's done, and then you're already starting to talk about next year. So we're really excited, and hopefully you were able to catch it. And if not, I'm sure Mr. Gordon will have it available online as well. And I couldn't be more proud of the work that Mr. Sweet and Mrs. Murnitz and Mr. Els and Mr. Reed and the list goes on of people who really stepped up and did amazing things for our students. And for these students who took in strides of having to sing and do all these things out of the box, and they were always willing and always game, and we tap danced them until they didn't have any toes left. So thank you so much for giving us the recognition tonight, because it really was a beautiful, beautiful production.
Thank you. From the student, I'm interested to know, what you've done in the past and what you're looking forward to at the high school, or how your experience was overall. And I know, Juliana, you being a senior, I always ask the question of seniors, what are your plans for the future after Grand Island? So we'll start with Alejandro and then...
Hi, I'm Alejandro Perez. Like all my life, I've just done stuff outside of school, across Buffalo, at the Theater of Youth, and more independent things. It's in the program. But yeah, I just, like, theater has been a part of my life, all my whole life. My family has been really in touch with instruments, musical stuff, and even going as far to co-own a theater company in the West Side. And it's just, performing arts has a very strong hold on my life and how I hold myself. And it's just very important to me. So I was so glad to make my debut here as as the Lion, and not even seeing the Wizard of Oz until I saw that we were doing Wizard of Oz here.
That's the shocking part. A lot of our kids had never seen the Wizard of Oz before, so we really had to tap into, this is a DVD player, and we're going to watch it.
It was actually on DVD.
Right? We watched it our first rehearsal together.
So yeah, I just took this chance to really become the Lion. Like, I love the stage. I can't live without being someone else on stage. I just love it.
He's the epitome of our method actor.
Yeah.
Alejandro, can you give the audience just a flavor of what the Lion sounded like on stage?
What drove the dog crazy, I guess?
Yeah, like when she hits me, I'm like,
What did you do that for?
That is great. Well done. Anthony, can you share a little bit of your experience as Scarecrow? And Hunk.
Yeah. My name is Anthony Borzilleri. I've done musical theater, I think, since I was 7 years old, outside of school. Being the Scarecrow was really, I think, my first lead role ever. Oh yeah, I was Brewster. Yes, I was. Yes, I sure was. I was Brewster.
I'm also his agent.
Yeah. Yeah. And at one of my other schools, I was Captain Hook and Peter Pan. I don't really come from much of a musical family. A lot of my family is like nurses, police officers, and correctional facilities. So it's pretty out of the box for me to do this, but my family has been pretty supportive of me throughout this. Like we said before, during this entire thing, we were all very, very close. And the last show, it really brought so many emotions, and we were all extremely close, crying on stage, a lot, crying today, a lot, and crying before this, a lot. It was all really just a great experience, and I learned so much from Mrs. Boutte, of course. It just taught me so much about acting, learning to develop a character, and knowing that I don't have to be exactly like that character, but it's always good to, embody most of it.
That's great. Thank you very much, Anthony. Congratulations. You did a great job. Hey, Juliana.
Hello. Okay, so, at least with my experience with theater, the first show I ever did was actually Wizard of Oz. I was like 8 years old, and I remember being part of the Lullaby League, so I was a little ballerina. And it's so full circle that this is probably the last show I'll ever do. And I'm Dorothy, and it's Wizard of Oz again. So theater in general has just made such a positive impact on my life with the people I've met the experiences I've had, and I just love it so much. And I encourage a lot of little kids, like especially at the meet and greet. They were like, "Oh my gosh, you do this?" And I'm like, "Yeah, you can do shows too. Like, get involved. It's awesome. You'll meet amazing people, amazing teachers. It's a great way to find your confidence, to experience your creative side." And so your question for into college, I want to major in art education. I've always been a natural educator, and I knew that I had to work with kids when I'm older because I love them. And so art education, I feel like, is really, it combines both my passions, my creative side and my inspiring side, with also working with kids and educating. So that's my plan for the future. I don't have a specific college down yet, but I know my major, and I'm very excited to go into it.
That's fantastic.
I think like too, these kids they kind of shot themselves because all of these kids and many of our kids who are in our production are also a part of other types of activities. So Juliana is part of tech, the tech department. She helped to create and design a lot of the sets that you saw. She also has done the mural for the class of 2022. Anthony is an amazing, he plays the oboe, he's fantastic. Alejandro's also an athlete, so I mean a lot of these kids are holding not just one thing, they're doing all of these things. And I think that really goes to show what I have always loved about Grand Island, and that is that we encourage kids to do multiple things while they're here and make the most of their experience, which just makes me really happy as an educator and as a parent on the island, so.
That's fantastic. I do, Juliana, I want to give you a little extra kudos. You worked with Larry Austin and created a podcast. And for those people in the audience, if you go to our website, you go to the community tab up on top, go to community relations, and you'll see 2 podcasts under joy in performance. Juliana, I was so impressed with how articulate, intelligent, and thoughtful you were in these 7 minutes of this podcast. And I encourage everybody to go and listen, even if you didn't get a chance to see the show. Just listen to how you, Juliana, responded to Larry's questions and how thoughtful you were.
Thank you.
It's really, really wonderful. And I can see this growing, with other podcasts on the joy and performance here in our school. So well done. And before we leave, I just want to give kudos to Glinda the Good Witch, who was Ella Wegfurt, and Chester Marvel and the Wizard of Oz was performed by Raceland Huff, and Elmira Gulch and the Wicked Witch of the West was performed by Sophia Bobek. Hickory and the Tin Man was
The Wicked Witch is dead. She's working at Delta Sonic today, so if you want to go get a car wash,
and Tip Hansen lady.
I don't think I'll be out in time.
she's working some.
Well, she was outstanding. Hickory and the Tin Man performed by Jaden Kleinschmidt. Uncle Henry was Albert Wayne, and Auntie M was Sophia Steck, and we're just so proud of everybody, so congratulations once again.
Thank you so
And
much.
you do not have to stay for the other meeting, because there's no place but home.
If our cast and our director would come up to the center here, we'll take a picture with the board.
I'm gonna here, tilt it a little bit. There we go, guys. Blackout, stage direction. I just can't stop directing.
I'll take a couple, and then Alice will take some, and if your parents are here, they can jump in. So we're gonna go 1, 2, 3, very nice.
Oh, you were great. Thank you. You all look beautiful.
Any parents?
Next up, we have our public comment sessions for agenda items only. At this time, public comments are invited from those individuals who desire to address the Board of Education on any topic which is on the agenda. Residents who have previously signed up to speak will be recognized by the president when speaking. Please identify yourself first, speak clearly and loudly enough for everyone in the room to hear you. Speakers are requested to limit their remarks to no more than 3 minutes, to appoint a spokesperson if a concern is a group concern, and if necessary or desired, to supplement verbal presentations with written reports. At this time, I would like to invite James Mulcahy up to speak.
So, with the people and families doing, how about you?
Yes, I'm James Mulcahy. 2 items. With respect to the budget, I recommend that the board dig down into the numbers. Do not look at group line items. Go down to the journal entries. You'll really be shocked at the way some of the money is spent. Secondly, one of the great shocks during the pandemic, when students were learning remotely, was that the parents saw what was being taught or not taught in the schools. And on the curriculum tab of the district website, there's a section on the curriculum through the 5th grade. Well, what about grades 6 to 12? Every course being taught in the middle school and the high school, and every section of every course, should have the current syllabus posted on the district website under the curriculum tab. The syllabi should include all textbooks and other material to be used in a course. Having it on instructor's homepage is not a substitute. Not every teacher has one, and it requires a unique flash to know who is teaching what. So I encourage the district to do this.
I won't be in it, but I'll be there.
Thank you. Next, Mike Murray.
Hello everyone, I'll be speaking on agenda item 13A. I'm Mike Murray, president of the Grand Island Teachers Association. I'm a resident, a parent of a student currently enrolled in high school. I'm here with other members of the GITA leadership to stand in support of the school board. Over the past few years, this district has shown steady, calm leadership during the COVID crisis. The school board is consistently focused on student safety, returning them to in-person learning as soon as legally possible, and high-level learning within the frameworks of the New York State mandates. It is very important that you know there are many GI parents and residents who appreciate the fact that you volunteer all of your time to help all the children here and all the children on Grand Island. Over the last few years, this board has been yelled at and criticized by a handful of Islanders who believe the Board of Education should have ignored the New York State mandates, fill the classrooms, and have every child who wants to remove their masks and defy the New York State Department of Education and the state government. If the school board would have ignored the state mandates, the consequences would have been loss in funding and would have severely crippled this district. Last year, the district brought kids back to school at the highest rate possible under the New York State mandates and the voter-approved budget. A group of Islanders sued the teachers and also sued the school district. Keep in mind, neither of these groups could control the New York State regulations. The district was forced to spend $96,568.60 to defend itself from the lawsuit. That's $96,568.60 of our tax dollars that could have been used to educate the children of Grand Island. Recently, there's been talk about suing the district once again because the district is enforcing the New York State mask mandate. We had a few parents verbally assault school board members and act aggressively towards teachers and staff because they were enforcing the mask mandate. As parents and teachers, we understand the frustration this pandemic has caused. Unfortunately, a few misguided parents have taken their frustration out on the wrong people. We're asking all of our neighbors and friends to maintain civility and set a good example for our children. We will be on the other side of this crisis soon, and because of your steady resolve, and the ability to look at the big picture, we will remain island strong. Thank you again to the Board of Education for everything you did.
Thank you very much. All right, that is all we had signed up for the agenda items only.
We walked in late. I'm gonna talk. I walked in late. Can I speak, please?
Is it an agenda item or is it a general item? If it's a general item,
13A.
if-
Is anything to piggyback off Mr. Murray?
Are there others too that came in late with you that want to speak? Okay. Why don't you come up
Okay, come
and
up
sign
and
the
sign in,
form,
please.
please?
Aaron Luisos?
That's me.
Yep.
Okay. Kind of choppy, but whatever. To piggyback off what Mr. Murray said, we'll be out of this soon. 700 some odd days counting. Not your issue, right? Here we are, again. So I posted something in Grander Ideas for Grand Island. It's student portraits, student self-portraits from North Tonawanda kids. If you remember that group, take a peek at it on Facebook. You can see the desperation in their eyes in these little self-portraits. Kind of disturbing. So, Johns Hopkins study showed that the lockdowns were only 0.2% effective against COVID mortality rates. All right? What are you doing? This goes above us in this room. It's a platform for me to say what I gotta say and reach a large group of people, especially the kids, students, so on and so forth. Our kids are being robbed of their education, their sanity, and their social skills, okay? I was here last week, and by the board's own admission, we now have 6 psychologists on staff in the district amongst the 5 schools. What does that show us? What's that telling us? There's a major mental health crisis going on. It's festering, it's bubbling, it's brewing. I see it in my own house with my boy. It ain't right. Okay? He's deteriorating, little bit by little bit every day. Okay? Now the governor says that she'll lift the mask mandates if the child vax rates increase. All this, it's just dangling that hook, that worm on the hook in front of us all. It's happened once before, did it not? Get vaccinated, lose the masks. And where are we now? Still in a mask. 700 plus days later. Okay? School is to serve the interests of the child, not the political climate. These kids, from Sidway to the high school, are being used as bait all the time. Okay? Know it. The governor does not care about you or anybody in this room other than her stock portfolio when it comes to this pandemic.
Aaron, 20 seconds.
Okay, good. Thank you.
That brings us to curriculum and instruction with Mr. Loria.
Thank you, and good evening, everyone. 2 items on our curriculum and instruction agenda. Item A is informational, which is just our January 2022 curriculum update. And the second item is our 2021-2022 revised professional development plan. So we haven't redone our professional development plan in a few years. This is actually an action item, but it's on here as information, and then the board can either choose to take action on that at their next meeting, or if they want to, they can certainly take action tonight.
Okay. For the professional development plan, then, can I have could I have a motion to approve the professional development plan?
I'll motion.
And a second?
I'll second.
All in favor? Aye. Any objections? Any abstentions? Motion carried 6-0.
Thank you, and I'll turn the personnel over to you, Ashley.
Okay, for personnel, if I could have a motion to approve PI 1 through PI 3, please?
I'll motion.
And a second? All in favor? Aye. Any objections? Any abstentions? Motion carried 6-0.
Just checking in with our principals if we have any introductions tonight. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Ashley.
Okay. And moving on to personnel non-instructional, if I could have a motion to approve PNI 1 through PNI 3, please?
I'll motion.
And a second?
I'll second.
All in favor? Aye. Any objections? Any abstentions? Motion carried 6-0. That brings us to finance with Dr. Harris.
I have a lot of things on here. I will go over the action items, and then I'll just kind of lump the other ones. If you have questions, just feel free to ask them. Action item A is obsolete textbooks pertaining to the middle school. Action item B pertains to the external audit. You received a presentation and approved the audit in October. This is the corrective action plan that has to be submitted to the state. Item C is the approval of business office training. Our senior account clerk typist is actually officially retired in a month, and we have went through the process of interviewing, so this allows her to come back and cross-train with that person, not to exceed 40 hours. And action item D is the transfer of roles and responsibilities, because the senior account clerk typist is also the treasurer. So at the reorg meeting, you'll see the new name just every year, but because there are things that are specifically tied for banking, the board has to take action. And I need it to happen before the next board meeting, because that person starts before the next board meeting. And then action item E is the new driver education contract amendment. And thank you to Hillary for all of the work she put forth to even allow this program to continue this year. It was not easy. Our old contract, they could not sustain that, and she did a lot of reaching out and was finally able to secure someone to work with our district. So it's something that our students here get to continue to participate in.
Thank you. If we could have a motion to approve finance items A through E, please?
I'll motion.
I'll second.
All in favor? Aye. Any objections? Any abstentions? Motion carried 6-0.
Okay, items F through M are for informational purposes for the board. A lot of things you have seen before, but just one thing to draw your attention to is the 24 million capital project final report. There are pictures there for you to view and just kind of see if you haven't been able to get to all of those spots and locations to see all of the work that's been done. And I guess the other thing to draw your attention to is the budget presentation that Dr. Grimm and I are going to start.
Are you ready?
Yeah, take it away.
Very good. So if it's okay with the board, we're going to stay where we are and present from our seats. But I do thank everybody for being here tonight. As the board knows, the mission of our school district is to inspire all students to achieve their highest potential by fostering academic excellence, personal growth, and social responsibility. We also try to follow some simple goals when developing this budget. First and foremost, to develop a long-term sustainable budget designed to provide the best diversified educational program, UPK to grade 12, to continue to retain the community-mandated student programs and activities that is so beloved by our students and the community, and as always, do our very best to protect the fund balance and our reserves. We, as the board knows, we have a 5-year strategic plan. Those goals include to steward the district toward improved services in wellness and behavioral health, to continue to work with our stakeholders to improve the connectedness between and amongst Grand Island and our entire Western New York community, to make inter-building communications and practices as seamless as possible, to foster a level of academic excellence and achievement that is emblematic of a championship school district, to ensure the completion of all of our curriculum maps while fostering the expansion of STEAM curriculum across the district, and to constantly review, revise, and expand benchmark assessments as appropriate. With that said, Ruby, I know we have some dates that we want to make sure the community and the board are aware of.
Yes, so the first slide here is just showing you kind of the background of the budgeting process. So we have meetings at cabinets, building administrators and department heads have already had meetings with me thus far. You will see in this presentation the governor's executive budget as well as Dr. Graham's enrollment projections. I sent out something maybe a week ago to our administrators just prioritizing, and then we'll continue to do that as we review to see what we're able to sustain and things that possibly should go to a future year. And then these are all of our budget meeting dates. So here we are today, and we will go through the presentation today. You will have another presentation on March 7th. With any updates pertaining to retirements and expenditures. And then Monday, April 4th, so these are all very early, early meetings. There possibly could be a budget to adopt. I do want to say the state's budget is usually due by April 1st, so April 4th is kind of tight, but we'll see if anything changes then. And then April 19th, which is that Tuesday, is the last possible adoption date, as well as the BOCES approvals that have to happen. May 9th is the public hearing, and then May 17th is the statewide budget vote.
So tonight's agenda, we'll go through several of the items that you see on this document and on the screen, and I guess we'll just get started, Ruby, with the governor's executive budget. It's pretty interesting how this budget came from the state. I know you have some specific comments about this.
The things that usually stand out for me, especially in comparison to the way we used to receive aid runs, is the amount of foundation aid increase that we received up front. And as we go through the slides, you will see how much Grand Island received on an individual basis. I will say that because of the upfront number that was given, which was over $1 million for our district, I do not foresee this number changing drastically. Usually we're waiting for that April output to come from the governor to say, okay, this is how much revenue we're getting. I've asked at BOCES meetings, they're pretty solid that this upfront number is really what she will receive, so they're not expecting much increase. I'm happy to say that I'm not telling you to advocate for expense-driven aids not being grouped together. She seems to get the gist, like this is not something, leave it alone, go move on to something else. UPK is set to continue, so I believe our total allocation is around, I'm gonna say around 468,000, give or take. Was I close? 478. So that allocation is also set for the current school year. The state is proposing that in the future years, they think this is something that they can sustain, that it will not be covered through federal funds, but we'll talk again next year to see if that is actually happening. But we are doing everything on our end, and Mike is going to provide an update at roundtable in reference to UPK. And then there are some forgivenesses that they're allotting across the state, which I think is really nice to see. You have districts that have been lobbying individually to really not receive penalties. So if this is something that is really signed on the dotted line, it could help districts. And if we have anything that we might be put in penalty for, it will help us in the future. But I haven't heard anything for this pertaining directly to us, but I do know districts that it's helpful for. Okay, So, this is the state aid proposed budget. I do like to show what was proposed in April of 2021. The updates from the November aid run, and then what is forecasted in this current executive run. You will see here how foundation aid has jumped tremendously, and we will have another jump that occurs for next year. This is happening because districts were shorted pretty much for multiple years their actual allocation. So they are trying to get us to equal. They're not going to back pay us, even though that's what I want to lobby for. They're not going to back pay, but they are going to get us through the actual formula. And if you remember in the past, I think one year we only received $80,000 in foundation aid increase. Last year I think we got a substantial amount, but it wasn't what was due to us, so they're hoping to fully fund that, and then we'll see how that carries forward, or if they change the formula.
Just want to emphasize how important this is. This board, our PTAs, a few years ago, pre-COVID, were actively advocating with our state and assembly representatives to restore the foundation aid formula. This is a significant improvement from the New York State government, and we're very grateful that Kathy Hochul did this. As grateful as we are, Ruby's words are so true. They're not doing the back pay. So, we're not, even though they're trying to get us to the formula, there are millions of dollars that we were shorted over a period of time of over 10, 12 years. So this is a step in the right direction.
Yeah.
So.
But this 1.1 number is true to the formula, that this is what we should be receiving?
Based on their formula of how they're going to get us to fully fund it, yes.
But this is not yet.
That is not fully funded, no. The way in which the plan was, they gave a allotment of funds last year, and then the plan is to do the same thing, well, the last year being the current budget year, the plan is to do it for this upcoming budget year and the following year. And then what they have done for districts who were already fully funded, because you did have districts that were already fully funded and some who may be overfunded based on the formula, they did not do reductions, they just get a percentage. So it might be like 2% or 3% of their allotment of an increase. So it doesn't seem like they're penalizing anyone, but they're trying to get us all to the same place, and then it'll be interesting to see how they carry that forward. If it's just a percentage, there are portions of the formula that they definitely need to update because it takes into consideration old numbers. I only want updates if it's gonna help me though. But we'll see how that goes. So if there is any updates or changes based on their formula in the future, I'll be sure to share that out. Some other notations here is BOCES I always like to draw attention to, because you'll see in the updated aid for November, it's 1.5 in comparison to the 1.7 they originally said. 1.7 is not correct, but 1.5 is not correct either. And that is because we do receive funds back, aid back for the debt service component, and the state lags. Another area, if you were to run not run it, but if you were to print out the state aid report that came out in January, you would see building aid a lot less. And that's because they go off of information before the final cost reports are due, which are December 31st. So the final cost reports are not taken into consideration. So there are things we do when we work with our financial advisor to make sure that we are actually spot on when it comes to building aid. You don't want to overestimate, you don't want to underestimate, because it has implications for the tax cap formula. Any questions on this? Dr. Graham and I fight over who gets to present this slide.
Maybe you win. You get to present.
Thank you. So this runs through the actual calculation for the tax cap. This is a draft. The 36 million is how much we levied in the 21-22 school year. The tax-based growth factor is just based on what we're getting from the county in reference to our growth factor in Grand Island. Pilots for the prior year, so the year we're in, was $25,000, and then the capital tax levy exclusion was $709. If you look back at the presentation from last year, you will see that as the capital tax levy at the bottom component, so that carries over. CPI is set, I think it's higher than 2%, but we're capped at 2%, so that's where you'll see that 2% or hear of the 2% tax cap from. Pilots will go down slightly in the upcoming year, and that is because they are phasing off and they go onto the actual tax roll. And then you have what our new tax levy limit is without exclusions. That number then carries down. And then you will see a large number that shows 1.8 million for the capital tax levy exclusion for the current budget that we're talking about, which allows for a tax levy limit of 38.3 million. And I know this is a shocker. It is definitely a high number. I think one of the things that I definitely wanted to mention here, and I don't think you can see it on that, but I think you can see it on your printed slide, is this is significantly higher because we have used for the last 3 years, 2.5 years, a debt service reserve. And we've used the debt service reserve to help with the cost of the $24 million capital project. Your debt service reserve is a component that is included in the tax cap calculation. Because that project is done and we're not using that reserve, it's no longer in the tax cap calculation, which then shoots up your capital tax levy. The way Rick Timms would say this is we have diminished how much we could collect yearly by saying we'll fund it from the debt service reserve, and now you don't have that. Or you do have it as a possibility, but you do it as a long-term thing that stabilizes. So I'm working with him. This could change slightly. I am working with him. We do currently still have a debt service reserve, but I can tell you from the financial planning aspect, it's something where they're looking at, instead of using 960,000 and then having this huge jump because it's no longer there, trying to plan something out where you're using 120 or 150,000 and it has longevity of 5, 10, or 15 years. So we're working on that. That is not included, that component, so this could come down some. I will work with him to try to, at the next board meeting, bring some suggestions to the board in reference to that. But I did want to show this in its full impact of not having that component there. Any questions? That's a lot. This is always a lot for me in there. We thought it was important, usually this is a slide we show in March or April. We thought it was important because the percentage was so high at 5.59% to show what this means for the proposed tax rates. If you recall, in the 2021 year, we were at 19.78 per thousand. And then in the 21-22 year, we actually proposed $20.41, but because of the assessment that happened, and the increase in assessed values on the island, it actually dropped the rate to $16.20. So that was over a $4 change. And so taking that assessed value into consideration, not knowing, I don't find out the new assessed value until August when the board approves the new rate, but taking that information into consideration and pushing the formula, it is estimated that it would be $17.10 per thousand. So it's a 91-cent change. Does that make sense? And I did want to show the projected, because usually the projected tends to be higher because there are factors that the district is not aware of until the end of July or really beginning of August. All right. Okay, so this is taking what you have seen tonight in reference to the tax levy and state aid into consideration, as well as the other revenue sources of the school district. So you will have sales tax on here, interest, in lieu of taxes, tuition, and other receipts, which if you need details for any of those items, I can supply them. I think a while ago I did something maybe a year or two ago just saying what goes into different categories, but I can just supply that again. The one thing you will notice that looks a little bit different is the appropriated fund balance I have highlighted down here. That is highlighted that way, if you remember from our presentation with the financial advisors, in reference to not designating this reserve and that reserve and this reserve, but just saying it is part of the appropriated fund balance and using what was necessary and not using what's not necessary. So I do show them earmarked as numbers there, but in totality, the appropriated fund balance would be 3.65. Does that make sense? Does everybody remember that from the presentation? Okay. This shows state aid as a percent of the budget. So you will see a comparison from one year to the next. Basic budget for February is always the highest, so clearly we were going to work to bring that down. But I think the thing at the bottom is to notice the percent of state aid in totality. And for us, it hasn't changed drastically, which really means that a huge component of our budget is really supported by our taxpayers. Okay, so these show a summary of major expenditures. The things that draw my eye, we can go line item by line item, but the things that draw my attention, and I definitely want to make sure are understood, one being salaries. That looks like a huge jump, but a part of that is the fact that we funded salaries through the grant for the current school year. So if you remember when we closed our budget gap last year, we said, I think it was roughly around $1 million, maybe a little bit under that, funds would be used from the federal grants. So those people have to be added back into the budget. This is showing all of that being added back in. If you remember from our presentation with the financial advisor, this is something that we will see if we can phase in, which would be helpful, but I had to show you the budget as it stood with full numbers, and this is where we will end up. So as I work through this, you will hear of like a 2-year plan or a 3-year plan to get all of those people back into the general fund budget, because once the grant life is done, then they have to be back in the general fund budget. Does that make sense?
So Ruby, at the end of all of our budget development, it's possible that the difference or the percent difference would decrease for next year if some of those people you've added back to the full budget go into federal grants.
Yes,
Okay.
it's very possible.
Yeah.
As you see the numbers as we continue through, and the fact that I do not believe the state in the foundation area is going to give more funds, there will be things that are moved and addressed, but I did this in totality because I think it's important to understand where we are and how we are going to collaboratively figure out a way to move us back into the position of everything being in the general fund.
Right. That's good, thank you.
Substitutes has a slight increase, and this is just, it is difficult to get subs. I think all districts are feeling the subs shortage, but some districts, especially neighboring districts, are getting pretty creative in the way that they are luring subs from other districts. So we, creative, I like to call it that. So we are looking at our options to make ourselves look a bit more appealing to pull those people in. So we just need to budget for that possibility. Nothing changed with the cash credit payments. That's been working well, knock on wood, the last 2 years, but it's also been COVID, so I guess we'll see how that continues to go, but we don't predict any changes there. Benefits is similar to salaries, actually. There was a component of benefits that was taken out and funded through the grant. I can, at the next meeting, if you would like, actually show what the percent increase is per the advisors. So if you'd like to see that.
Is the benefits just health insurance there, or is it something other than health insurance?
It is health insurance, but it's all health insurance. So it's self-funded, it is stop loss, it's retirees. So it's multiple components. It's not just the self-funded plan.
And how many employees do we have generally?
Oh, on insurance?
Ballpark. Yeah.
Ballpark taking insurance. I think it's in the mid 400s.
Yeah. I had a real number, Glenn. I just
Well, but
type a
not-
couple
not-
keys
not-
on
you
it.
know,
That includes, admin, SOP, and GITA.
I can provide more detail in reference to
Yeah, very
that.
helpful, thank you.
Okay. Just writing that note. ERS, there is no increase there. You will see on the next slide, the percentage for ERS has actually dropped some. The reason why we didn't do a decrease though is because it is capturing the COVID period. It's capturing from April of 2020 until March of 2021. So that was a time period where bus drivers weren't doing field trips, there weren't extra runs. So there are financial salary components that, yay, for a year, and then I am assuming that it's gonna go back up. So we don't want to shortchange that for a year and then have to then try to build that up as well as handle other financial areas in the budget for the following year. So we left that stable. TRS has an increase here. TRS is based on salary. So as that salary line changes and we figure that out, there's slight adjustments that will happen here. But the TRS rate this year is higher than it was the prior year. And I'm assuming that's going to hopefully slowly grow, but continue to grow. FICA is based on your salary amount. So as salaries go up, FICA goes up. And then we will get into BOCES again, but we did sit down and we had our BOCES meeting with different administrators pertaining to some service and staff requests. I'll go into a little bit more detail as we drill down on those areas, but that is increase of $125,000.
Ruby, does that include the monies we have to give them for capital, their
Yeah.
capital project as well?
Yes, that is incorporated in their BOCES though. Then you have a slight decrease in debt service of $40,400. You have an increase in gas. This is in the transportation and the buildings and grounds departments. And special education has a couple of kiddos that are going through the CPSE process, and they possibly could be placements, 3 children, so we are just budgeting for that. As you know, special ed is an area that when the need arises, it's something that we have to follow through with, so we just want to make sure we have the funds available to support that. Any questions on this slide? Sorry, thank you. So here you will see the TRS and ERS rates. This goes back all the way until the 16-17 school year. And as noted in reference to the ERS side, this just provides that information of the time period that is their look back period and the reason for keeping it stable. Next time we're putting enrollment in between all of this or something. All right, so, this first section for human resources truly takes all of the things I just discussed and brings it over to this slide, and it's just so we can see everything in its totality. Underneath the HR component, you have instructional programs, so this shows the BOCES amount. One thing I do want to note, which you will see as a request, is going to be for, it's for a 0.5 speech, but there are some things that I will discuss then that are incorporated in BOCES, so I do see BOCES actually dropping. It'd be great if it was net zero for the BOCES side, and then supporting in our own budget just based on how much BOCES charges for each teacher. And we do, go ahead.
What is our reimbursement rate? Has that changed at all for BOCES, the reimbursement for
I'll
services?
check into that.
I just wondered if there was a change, and I was looking through and didn't see the rate that we get reimbursed for those programs and services.
I will make a note to check rate. I have not heard of any change, and just so you're aware, I think the last couple of years, we have taken things that have been a BOCES service and brought it in-house. I know we did it with E&L, and then I feel like we did it with a behavioral component that we were outsourcing to someone.
Yeah, we are outsourcing it to our contractual line, not through BOCES, but we did bring back the E&L, and we also brought back a hearing teacher.
Okay.
In the last couple of years.
And the reason for that is, even though you'll have a BOCES reimbursement rate, they do not handle staffing at that reimbursement rate. BOCES has salary caps on what they will reimburse. So that person may cost you, and then they get expensive, so I'm gonna go off of a 0.8 from BOCES is $120,000. And you're not getting half of that back. So when you get into needing things that are 0.5 and above, that's when we really look at, is there a benefit to bring them in-house based on the reimbursement, and based on the fact that we can do a 1.0, utilize them far more to meet the students' needs and pay less. And both, we're very transparent when we have our BOCES meetings and expressing that to them, so that is something that we are looking into. Because we started with a 0.4, which looks different, and it's usually harder to get a 0.4 speech teacher, or anything 0.4. Really, it's been difficult. But when you get into the 0.8s and 1.0s, people feel like there's longevity there, and we're also having those discussions of, is there longevity? Is this a one-year thing and then the need goes away, or do you see upcoming needs? And we do see upcoming needs. So, okay, I will get that for you though. After that, you will, for a lot of these, you will actually see the conference and travel add back. 2 years ago, when COVID was a mist and we knew people weren't going to be traveling places, that was something that was removed from the budget. I believe, just off the top of my head, conference and travel district-wide was around $75,000. And so that was removed to close a budget gap. Last year, it wasn't really a need for it. It was quiet. This year, it's slowly been a request of, can you move money into my conference and travel line? Do you have money? Are you using federal money? So we are doing some of those things. We don't want people not to have professional development opportunities and to partake in those things. But it was something that I told people, if you want conference and your money back, you need to say you want your money back. So what I will do is I will create on the next board meeting, you will see it building by building what the individual amount is. So you can see that in totality. But this was just how it looked for the draft budget component. So that is what you see for curriculum. Special ed tuition primarily is that $100,000 you already saw on the last slide, plus conference and travel components. I think it's been 3 years now in reference to the school buildings. We have pooled the money into one central code after discussion with the building administrators as well as Mike, it was decided that we should give them a component of their money at the beginning of the year, so we just put the funds there into their actual building codes. That way they're not held up, so they can do their summer ordering, any textbook ordering that they would like to do early in the summer, so they are here in time for teachers and students. We would allow for that. This is not a budget increase when I talk about textbook add back. It is a shuffle from a central code back into their individual codes. Does that make sense? Okay, because for example, a good example of this was, I believe at one point, the middle school or the high school, one of you, were around $40,000. Then we took that full $40,000 and we put it in a central code. And now the middle school and the high school are getting, I want to say it's 20 or 25,000. If you want to break out, I can provide that. I have tons of details in reference to that, but it just allows them to start the year and move forward accordingly. Whereas before you were approving, probably in that July and August meeting of this year, you approved a textbook transfer into those account codes. So it just puts the funds where they need to be from the beginning. In the other areas, district-wide, it is again conference and travel add back, so you'll see a more detailed component of that. And these are the amounts that were already there. People weren't really asking for increases, they were just asking for what they had 2 years ago. And even though the Board of Education didn't say they want their line back, my assumption is once they are allowed to gather for Erie County school boards, that is what we will be doing. So those funds have been placed in that account as well. And then you will see here, under central administration, there is a decrease. And the only reason why it decreases what happens is because that is where the textbook funds were previously housed. So those funds have went back into buildings, which has decreased the central admin area. Any questions thus far? If people are lost, just ask. It's a lot of information. Okay. And then you have operations. Athletics is contractual increases. A lot of that deals with the fact that we have to pay the refs. John also has to pay any fees for athletic components, and they have increases. So a lot of those increases are actually outside of our control. Section 6 will tell people what it is, and that's what you're paying. If you want more details, I can provide it. I do know that there's just a contractual component, and the rates are set to increase for the upcoming year. Biz Ed is conference and travel, technology is conference and travel, and then transportation, a component of that you saw when you saw the increase for gas request. Some contractual components for her, which would include the actual provider of the routing software. So some things are like a 2% or a 3% increase per the agreement. I think we use Versatrans. So she has to plan for that increase as well, so those things are encumbered there. And then you get into the debt service area, which just carries over what was already showed, that debt service is going down slightly, but this shows you piece by piece how principal has gone up, how capital debt interest has gone down, and how we are no longer paying for the band premium and the band interest because we went to bonds. No changes here for transfer to funds. That is a request in a future slide, but there's nothing here. And then you will see the different revenue sources. So you'll see the state aid increase, which is a couple slides from this one. You will see the tax levy increase, and then you will see the removal of the debt utilization or the debt service reserve, and a slight decrease in the BOCES aid. So this just really copies over the information that was shown on the revenue slide. Dr.
All
Hearn.
right, thank you, Ruby. So for our board and for our community, in the 2019-2020 school year, we had a total enrollment of 2,815 students, K through 12. Last year, when we started off the year in hybrid, and then eventually closed the year off with all of our students in school, our enrollment decreased to 2,742. And as we look to this year and review our enrollment as it stands today, we're at 2,816. So our enrollment numbers have gone back to where they were in the 2019-2020 school year. Any questions about that? Just in case you were thinking about, children who were being homeschooled last year and this year, you can see that the numbers are displayed here in the chart. We had 4 kindergarten students in homeschooling last year, and we have 5 this year. So you can see that at Sidway, last year there were 16 children engaged in homeschool, and now there are 11. And at Hughes there were 16, and that increased to 39 this year. And at Kegabyne last year we had 31, and it decreased to 22. At the middle school we had 22 total students in all grades engaged in homeschooling last year and 21 this year. And at the high school level, 21 last year and 19 this year. This chart just represents Grand Island High School enrollment from 2016-17 to what we're projecting going into next year at the 2022-2023 school year. You can see that over time, with less students enrolling in kindergarten, those kids are moving through the system, and as they're getting into middle school and high school, some of that enrollment is decreasing. So we might see the high school for the first time in a long time be under 900. Now, that 884 number can go up with 8th graders coming out of St. Stephen's, for example, and choosing Grand Island High School. But that 884 number is emblematic of just overall changes in enrollment over time throughout the district. You can see that it bounces back up to 910 and hovers around 880 and then 859, just using the numbers from the middle school and going into the high school in the future. This is a chart that represents middle school enrollment over time. 2016-17, 700 students, 694. You can see that it's been pretty consistent, hovering around the 650 mark. For the 2022-2023 school year, we still think 650. It could go down to 615 and then below 600 in a couple of years. Again, emblematic of some of the younger grades having less or fewer students. So we'll keep an eye on that. This is really a positive slide. You can see that Hughes and Kegabyne School, God bless you, enrollment has hovered around 840 and 850 over several years, and then a dramatic drop to 750, 794, and then we're projecting 806. So we're starting to see growth at Hughes and Kegabyne. And this is Sidway. So again, this is emblematic of growth here on Grand Island. 2016-17, only 373 students, and we're looking at next year 448. So you can see that the kids coming into kindergarten and first grade are over 200, which is good for the district, and so I think this is a sign of positive growth. This shows you the current elementary class size ratios. Sidway is the first group of information here. This is Sidway, and then you'll see Hughes, and then you'll see Kegabyne. So for Sidway, this year there are about 220 students in our kindergarten classrooms shared amongst 11 teachers. There are other kindergarten students that aren't shown on this slide, and those students are in self-contained special education classrooms at Sidway. And that's true in first grade as well. So this just takes a look, it's a snapshot of the general education program at Sidway. The class size is around 20. Hughes Overall, class size is around 22, and Kegabyne overall class size is of 21. Are there any questions about this slide? So again, current size class ratios, are those averages. You'll take note that at Sidway there are 21 classroom teachers between kindergarten and first grade, 19 at Huth, and 16 at Kegabyne. And you can also see by this chart, 422 students served at Sidway, 417 at Huth, and at Kegabyne 347. Any questions about this? So as you know, the district takes a look at the births that are attributed to Grand Island 5 years ago to make predictions on future kindergarten enrollment. The arrow is pointing to a predicted kindergarten enrollment number next September at 231 students. So that's good news. That's exciting news that the island may be growing in this area, and that we will be benefiting from those students coming to Sidway. You can see that the following year, there's a slight dip with a predicted number of 196. But then you see that number go back over 200 in the years after that. So I think that's good news for enrollment in Sidway. Any questions about that? So when we start to project the number of teachers needed in each building and at each grade level, right now we're just going to look at Sidway with 229 projected students going into kindergarten, with shared amongst 11 teachers, and class sizes hovering between 20 and 21, and keeping 10 teachers at first grade with 220 students and class sizes at 22 at this time. And you can see that at Huth, maintaining the 19 teachers that are currently this year at Huth for next year, and then at Kegabyne increasing from 16 to 17 based on these projections. You can see that the numbers are a little funny. Say, for example, 82 kids at Kegabyne for third grade. You can't drop that number, to 3, and so adding a teacher at Kegabyne will keep the class sizes at around 21 to 22, just as they are at Huth. Any questions about this? Our current secondary enrollment, 204 sixth graders, 243 at 7th grade, and 194 at 8th grade, for a total of 641. And then below that chart, you'll see that also we're keeping track of how many students are in special education self-contained classes, and they're represented there. And again, you'll see that at 6th grade, we have 9 classroom teachers helping 204 kids with a class size of 20. Class sizes go to 23.